Welcome to the Level Up Your Band podcast, episode 75. Hello, and welcome back to the Level Up Your Band podcast. My name is Gavin Patterson, and I'm here with Julian Pombal.
Hi.
Hi. We're on the lattes. No, we're on the Americanos.
I've got a glass of dirty water. I've got some puddle water.
Last night's dirty dishes water.
Good. It's a good Scottish drink.
Mm. It's like that's what Scotch broth is. It's just leftover dishwater from, I don't know.
Yes, popular amongst the proletariat. No, it's
very nice.
It's cold coffee. It had ice cubes in it at one point.
They all melted.
Yeah, they just kind of gave up.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so yeah. Should I ask you how you are this week? I think I'll ask you how you are this week. How are you this week? I haven't asked you how you are this week for a long time. Since we did Zoom.
It's probably because I tell you as soon as I come in.
Yeah, I know.
It's like I always come in with some like ridiculous thing that happened to me, like my hand almost getting crushed today by my fiance. It's long story short, she was trying to show me this cool thing that the new car. It's not that cool, but cool thing that the car does. And she took the keys out and she was like, "Look, She didn't even say anything. She didn't say look. She just started doing it. My hand was outside of the car, and all I suddenly feel is excruciating pain. And I'm like, ah! She's like, oh my god, holy oh my god! And she rolls the window back down. I was just like, what are you doing? The cool thing was that when you turn the car off, you can roll the windows up and down,
right.
electronically.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I know. I mean, to be fair, the previous car didn't do that. It was kind of cool, but oh boy, it was terrifying.
Left hand.
Left hand, yeah.
So the one that does all
the really important one. Like, actually, now that I think about it, this one I could just like if it suddenly dies or whatever, I'll just strap. I'll learn somehow. Like, I'll just sellotape like a plectrum to my stump. And I'll just do that, but like this, no way.
Plectrum boy.
I would have no clue.
So
but yeah, that's been me. That's the most exciting thing that's happened.
To sum up, your week has been having your fingers caught in a window.
Yeah, I know. So far, we'll see. Tune into the next episode to find out if what happens next.
Last week you were wearing a red hat. That was your chat last week. So.
Yeah. Last week I looked like a gnome.
Yeah. Yeah. So today,
this time I'm just very grey and muted.
Yeah. Today, so we've been, the last few episodes we've been talking about like Spotify playlists and press packs, press kits. That was last week.
Yeah.
So it's kind of...
You'd think it was boring. It wasn't boring, actually.
Going on, like...
It's very interesting.
The whole... this whole podcast is kind of a DIY, kind of you can do it yourself kind of vibe.
Yeah.
No one's going to level up your band for you. You need to, level it up yourself.
Yeah, you need to clean your own goddamn room.
Yep.
you need to work on your own band.
So this kind of extends to. I was thinking like I'm always thinking like things I've done or things I can improve upon in my own projects, and how can I level up? How can I improve what I do? So I can talk about something in the podcast. And I was thinking recording yourself. Now we've talked about having your own recording setup at home and how you can do like demos and stuff, but should that be, this whole podcast is going to be about, this episode's going to be about talking about whether or not that's a viable option for people as actually recording their own material for their band at home, and whether that's viable. So just talking to you just before we started recording, because studios have been, shut down, a lot of them, for most of 2020, a lot of musicians have been recording stuff from home. And I've certainly mixed quite a lot of stuff over 2020 from the odd band here or there that recorded at home, and that's where their expertise ended, and they needed someone to make it shiny.
Yeah.
A couple of projects I've done, like one of them even ended up on vinyl.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a record label situation, where they did this home recording on GarageBand.
Right.
And then I took it all, made it sound pretty, and then they got it released on a label and got it on vinyl, and it's in vinyl shops on like a compilation disc that their label released. So clearly people are doing it. So I was going to kind of spitball some ideas on like pros and cons of doing it yourself and stuff. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad thing to be self-reliant. Speaking as a self-employed person, I'm all about that self-reliance. I don't like to rely on anyone else if I can help it.
No, totally. Yeah, I agree. The only time there's a difference though between like relying on other people and delegating.
Yes,
You know.
yeah. You need to watch that. Like,
Yeah, totally.
yeah. Don't be a control freak. I don't think I'm a control freak. I'm a control freak about really specific things like XLR cables and microphones. Don't touch my cables. Don't touch my microphones.
I know. I do. I come into the studio every time. I'm like, hey, do you need a hand? Like to set up? No, I got this. I'll just do it myself. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's fair enough. I mean, it just means I
That's the only thing I'm precious about. But like drum gear and stuff, nah, you can do what you want. It's not gonna. I mean, it's designed to be hit, so nothing can. You can't really go wrong. Apart from tom heights settings, I hate that. Drummers, if any drummers are listening, when people muck up tom arms and then you go set the kit up, the next time it's 3 inches higher than it was last time. You're like, oh,
people trying to be Lars.
yeah. Or Jeff Picaro, really super high toms. Can't do that. I like my toms low.
Yeah.
Just so the audience can see my pretty face, right? It's nothing to do with ergonomics and not hurting my back. No, so they can see my face. So yeah, so due to the fact that the studios were shut down for ages, I should know because mine was shut down for ages.
Yeah.
Bands were recording themselves at home, little demos and stuff. So now that we're kind of out of COVID-ish, lockdowns are lifting.
Out-ish. We can definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's nearly there.
Yeah, and it's not another train.
We can smell the fresh air. We're like,
So, yeah. Now that that's happening and gigs are starting up again, maybe bands are like, well, we did that recording in lockdown and it wasn't too bad and we released it and it sounded okay. Maybe we should just do that next time.
We should keep doing that.
Yeah. So we'll go through some pros and cons of recording your own music, just recording. So the pros, we'll go for the pros. And I've got a list here, but please add some if I've forgotten any. I think number one, it's cheap.
Oh, it's so cheap. Yeah.
So you don't have to. The only thing you have to buy is the equipment.
Yeah.
And
you're not paying for time.
You're not paying a studio for the time. That's
and labor
that could be a pro.
I mean, yeah, that's a big plus. I've seen a lot of people that like I've been in situations where they have recorded most of like the hard stuff to get right in a studio. Yeah. And then everything else has been done at home, all the extra stuff, stuff that can be done at home with like a MIDI keyboard or like I was even in a situation where they just did vocals in the house.
Right.
Didn't do it in a vocal booth.
Yeah.
And it came out fine.
Yeah.
It sounded okay,
Yep.
So I suppose that's like a sort of hybrid situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen that happen a lot, where it's like half recorded in the studio, half recorded at home, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Obviously, I've dealt with projects where it's kind of mishmash of studio / home / you name it, and it can work, but it needs to have someone in charge. See if it's too disconnected, the music can suffer. So if one person, and it needs to be one person that oversees the project, whether it's the guitarist who knows a bit about DAWs, who's overseeing the project, a producer. Because if there's no producer, then you just go, oh, I've recorded my bit, and then you hand it over to the bassist, they record their bit, and by the time it gets back to you, it's like Chinese whispers, it ends up some Frankenstein mess. You need someone who can listen to every stage of the process and make sure that it's doing what it was set out to do, and doesn't become completely bizarre and weird. It's this, like, I always suggest bands record live in a room together for the most part, like foundationally, but obviously if you're doing it in a house by house individual situation, then you can do that. Now, you could go to the guitarist's living room and he's got a wee recording rig and jam as a band in a house. That still comes under this category of should you record your band yourself, because you just go to your mate's house and maybe the drums, the bass and the guitar could set up in a living room somewhere, and that's technically live. It's like a live recording kind of thing. So you can still do that. Will it sound nice? Well, we'll get onto that. So not another pro. The only barrier to completion is your own work ethic. So if you don't put the work in, it doesn't get done. You're not waiting on some engineer, getting through his pile to get to your music. If it's not complete, it's because you're not getting the finger out and getting it done. So there's no barrier there. So that's a pro.
Yeah, you can work on it as much and for as long as you like.
Yeah. So that's a pro, but I would say it's also a con in some regard, because the longer you work on a thing, the more grey and bland it will sound to you, because there's nothing new. So fatigue, things like that. When you start listening to something over and 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 over, eventually it doesn't make any sense, and the decisions you make start to make no sense, and you start making mistakes, and then you start ruining it. You start ruining your song. That's a hard thing to get over. Took me about a year, 2 years of mixing music to start to not do that. Stop ruining mixes. It's at that point where you're like, okay, the song's there, stop.
Yeah.
Oh, I could improve it a wee bit. There's this wee voice in your head. It's like, oh, I could improve it a good 10%. Stop. Come back.
Yeah, totally.
And when you come back to it, it's when you come back to it, that's when the best judge is. It's like, oh, wow, this sounds so good. Like, I can't believe I got it this far. I thought it sounded terrible, because I left the session thinking, oh, I can do a little bit more. But when you come back, you go, oh, wow, actually, I pushed this way past what I thought.
Yeah, totally.
But you can still find that 10% on fresh ears. Because if you go past that, oh, I can get 10% better, you're just going to start undoing all the nice work you've done.
Yeah, totally. That applies to everything. I do that all the time when I'm writing music as well.
All right. How?
In the way that I'll write something and then I'll finish it and I'll be like, oh, let's add in more parts. Let's change the chords here. Let's do this thing here. Let's add a modulation here. Let's like add a weird break here, and then it's like, no, go away. Stop thinking about it, and then look at it again and listen to it. And every time I do that, I'm like, yep, this is fine.
Yeah, Yeah, I suppose.
Otherwise, you end up overcomplicating it. But I suppose that's the same with with mixing and things like that. You suddenly start automating things that shouldn't be automated.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't automate for the longest time. Automate is, for those who don't know what that means, automation and mixing means controlling parameters in real time. So if you get to a point in the music where you want the guitars to be louder, you can ride a fader on the mixing desk and push it up, and it will record that move, and then every time you play it back, it will do that move again and again.
Yeah.
You can do it with EQ, plugins, everything.
Yeah. And if you don't want to do it physically, you can just draw it in.
You can draw it on the waveform as well, yeah. So, yeah, when I first started mixing, I kind of didn't do much in the way of automation to begin with. It's just because I was not experienced in things. Plus, I was mixing on a laptop with a mouse, and it's really hard to automate with one control surface. The control surface being you can only select one thing at a time. The mouse, whatever you're clicking on. I think it's more intuitive if you have complete control of multiple things at the same time. So you can have your fingers on, 10 fingers if you have 10 fingers, and 10 faders. So you can swell 10 faders all at the same time and record all of that in real time, and you can just move around the board and do a whole pass of a song, and you can basically do 90% of your automation in one pass. But I couldn't do that with a laptop and a mouse. It was too clinical, too narrow. I didn't have enough. What's the word? Not enough width of control. But now that I've got the 10-point touch screen, I can put my hands on the screen and alter 10 things at the same time, which means I can get more done faster. It's more intuitive. It's like if anyone's ever played around with live sound, I've done some live sound for bands, and you have your fingers resting on the faders all the time. And you're pulling things back and pushing things up as the music is progressing through the night. So you might swell all the faders up at the chorus and bring it back down for the verse. You might find in the verse that the guitar is too loud for the vocalist, so you'll pull the guitar down, and then the chorus is fine, then you put it back up again, and that all happens at live sound all the time. And you can do that same thing in the studio, but if you've just got a laptop, you're kind of limited. You can only do one fader at one time. Just a wee side tangent there, but it's things you learn over doing it. Becomes more natural. So that's a con of recording music yourself, because not everyone has that technology unless they go and buy a control surface with faders, which aren't dear. You can get an 8 fader control surface that controls Pro Tools or Cubase, and you can do all your automation on a control surface, which is an option.
Yeah.
You can even hook up to a MIDI keyboard, and if the MIDI keyboard has faders on it, you can use the faders.
Yeah, I mean, I have a MIDI keyboard that has faders.
Yeah,
so
you can link them to Cubase if you wanted for automation. You can record automation on. Cool. So, we alluded to this one. Another pro would be you can spend more time on getting what you want. So you just, if you want to get X sound, you can spend as much time as you want trying to get that sound, whereas you're not limited by studio time because there is no studio.
Yeah.
And nobody knows your own music as well as you do.
Yeah.
So you may as well.
Yeah, totally. Unless you've been working with the same engineer for years.
That's true. Yeah.
At which point, but yeah, in this case, you know your music better than anybody else.
Yeah, but that's also a con. I've written here. It's also a con because if you're too close to it, then you have a biased perspective. Sometimes an external opinion or ear can add something or bring out something in your music that you didn't even know it was there.
This is why you don't want to have yes men in your in your band. You want to have real, living, breathing human beings
Yeah.
who will be like, yeah, that's good there, or no, that sounds bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this before, just being sort of frank and honest. But yeah, that is a con, because otherwise you could, if you're just working on it by yourself and you're not recognizing that bias, then you're just gonna think whatever you make sounds great.
Yes. Well, I've had in the past been given songs to mix or songs to record or whatever, and it's finished songs, and they maybe the band have been recording and mixing for like the last year, and they're finally finished with it. Maybe I'm mastering it or something. And you hear the mix, and they say they've spent like months and months and months working on this, like taking them like 3 months to mix it. Typically takes me about a day to mix a song, not 3 months. When you hear that, it's a big red flag. It's probably because they've ruined it. And you hear the mix, and it is. I've rarely hear something that's the quality that it could be, because the longer you work on it, it just becomes so grey.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's just like it's like JPEGs. Like the more it's like they just memes just become downgraded over time, and then they just because they keep getting compressed. That's not what's happening in the mixing. It's not like each mix is getting compressed or whatever. But the idea is being completely lost over time.
Yeah.
It's like the whole what's that? The ship thing. Is it Theseus' ship? I can't remember what it's called.
Oh yes, yeah. They have to replace every.
Yeah, totally. It's like, is it still the same? Is it still the same ship at the end of the day? If you replace the mast and then the sails and literally every single bit of wood, but in the same order.
I would say yes, because it still embodies that same
it's
ethos.
The essence of the thing is still there in some way, but
it's kind of like, it's like a country, isn't it? It's like is it still Scotland if everyone who invented the country is dead, and all the ideals and systems and political systems and economics and everything is all completely different from what it was when it was founded? Is it still Scotland? And the answer is yes. Yes, geographically it's the same, but I'm talking abstractly. Yeah, it's we're getting into real weeds now.
It's just that it just popped into my head, because that's the danger, isn't it? You mix something loads and loads and loads of times that you're at danger of sort of like losing the original intention.
Aye.
Yeah.
What's the big thing that I always see happening in home mixes? The worst flaw of them is because everyone has equal say in the mix, and it's not down to one person. What ends up happening is everything in the mix is equally loud, is equal volume, meaning that there's no the like as I've said about 10, 15, 20 episodes ago. The main focus of attention, the emotional content of the song, the lyrics, the melody, the guitar solo, whatever happens to be the main focal point, is as loud as all the other parts, because everyone's ego is getting involved and they want everything equally loud. And when you do that, everything just becomes grey. It's like in cooking, where you want a good blend, but you also want certain flavors and notes to be louder than others.
Exactly. You don't put all equal parts spices, because then you're just gonna like. Imagine if you put like, I don't know, like equal parts like garlic powder to cayenne, you'd fucking die. Not the garlic, the cayenne would kill you.
Blow your head off.
Well, I mean, like I'm just I'm a little Hispanic white boy, so like I struggle with spice sometimes. I can handle it, but if something's too hot, it's too much, and KN, it'll just destroy you if you're not careful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you want something signature. Whatever makes it signature is this was it's louder than the rest of the mix.
Yeah.
And cooking or
Totally.
songs.
Like I noticed that interesting thing that I've been noticing. I've been listening to a lot of. I was telling you this on the Monday. I've been listening to a band called Rancid, and the thing that's interesting about that band is that the bass is so prominent in all the tracks, and the guitar's kind of in the background. You can hear it, you know, but it's very muted compared to the bass. The bass is driving the whole thing.
Okay.
It's just all you hear. It's like 75% bass guitar and drum kit, and like 25% guitar. It's interesting, you know, but it just gives it that particular rancid sound, you know. It doesn't sound rancid, but it sounds like rancid. Yeah, you know. Well, it's just an interesting thing that's sort of.
I remember watching a documentary on mixing. It was a mixing engineer YouTube video thing talking about mixing. It was Bob Clearmountain. He's probably the most famous mix engineer ever. He was talking about a Bruce Springsteen record that he was mixing, and he was struggling to get the Springsteen sound, and he was working on it for ages, and he was like, I can't get that. And Bruce came in the session, and he was like, oh, let's hear it, and then they fire it up, and Bruce is like, God, can you turn the guitars up? And Bob's like, sure, they're pretty loud. He's like, yeah, turn them up, come on, turn them up. And he turns them up, and as soon as he did it, he was like, oh, there's Bruce Springsteen. It was like, immediately, it was like, oh, that's what it is. That's the thing. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Big guitars. And it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So he was trying to make it sound like a nice
balance.
Record. Yeah, nice balance. Like, but it was like, no.
Pop record, yeah.
It's not, it wasn't, it was a certain thing that they were after. And it was like, oh, okay, right, I get it now. It's funny. So, cons.
Okay.
Kind of touched on cons, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, I mean, what's the first one there? I don't know if it's what I'm going to say.
You have to learn how to do it, and that takes time.
Yeah. And it's hard to, like, well, you'd probably disagree. You'd probably say, actually, it's quite simple. But, you know,
I wouldn't say it's simple.
Or straightforward.
It's not straightforward either. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and learning.
At the end, it's like anything, you know. Like you need to take the time to actually learn. If you want a good result, you need to take some time and learn how to do it. You know.
Yep. It's not intuitive.
I can imagine.
Learning how to work a DAW is not intuitive. It really isn't. You can get like everyone has used a computer, so you think, oh, opening up a digital audio workstation for the first time must be, it's like opening Microsoft Word. I'm sure there'll be some things that are the same, and there kind of is. You've got open, you've got close, you've got save, you've got file, edit,
you've got those tabs,
select all, you've got all that stuff, but then you've got like VST connections, you've got plugins and faders,
and a bunch of jargon that you might not even
loads of stuff
know about. It's just like interleaved. What's interleaved? What's
sample rate and bit depth and there's a lot of stuff. It's like everything you read in every single menu, it's just like, oh, I better look that up. Okay, I now know what that is. Then you go into the next one. Oh, I need to look that up too.
Every time I have to work on something, well, I worked on like a really big project.
A movie?
It was a movie. So a short film. And basically when I was working on it, I just had the wonder, the great thing of having two monitors, computer monitors. I had Cubase on one monitor and the wiki on the other monitor, and like the forums and stuff, and just like searching things up as I was going, you know.
Yep. That was me in the early days. Yeah, I used to have a tab open with the Cubase manual all the time. So every time I stumbled upon something, I didn't know what
To
it
be
did.
fair, I did make it really, really hard on myself. I don't know. It's got nothing to do with level up your composition. That should be a new podcast that we start doing.
Yep.
Because it's not the place for it. But I did make it really hard for myself by trying to do the whole film in one big project. And now that I'm sort of thinking about it, I should have just made separate, smaller projects.
Right. Okay. So the whole film was in one session.
You know what? I should show you the session. You'd probably look at it.
Like 3,000 tracks or something.
Your head would you'd just pop a
blood vessel.
A vessel, just like
How many tracks? If it was under 200 tracks, I'll be really surprised.
I was under 200
Really?
tracks. Yeah.
Okay.
It was quite minimalistic, the soundtrack
Right,
that I
okay.
went for.
Christ, some songs I don't even, they're over 200 tracks.
You know, because I wanted to just use like, you know, I wanted to. It was my first film as well, so I didn't want.
So
to,
what? See, when you recorded like a synth patch and one bit later on in the film, there was a piano. Did you put the piano and the synth on the same track, or did you make multiple different?
I made multiple. What I ended up doing was making up different folders for the different areas that needed music.
Yeah, that's genius.
And then I had all the tracks, and so it was kind of
separated,
and it made sense.
Aye.
Sort of. But I wouldn't do it like that again.
Well, the way I do it for mixing is I mix each project is its own song. So if it's a song, it has its own project. But when I'm mastering, if it's an album, I have all the songs in one project. So say it's a 12-track album, I have all the songs in one.
I should have done it like that. The thing was, it's like a lot of the music was like, 30 seconds. Or like a minute and 20 seconds of like music or whatever. So I would have ended up with about 9 sort of micro tracks.
Okay.
Basically. But
it's not that much.
No.
It's not that much. I mean, some albums are 15 tracks, Yeah, I've got some master projects where it was like 10, 12 track albums and every single song is on the one project, and then depending on how complex the album is, if it's got like changing, like if it's a seamless album, there was one seamless album I did where there's no break, it's basically one big long song, the whole album, and you have to seep each track into the next seamlessly, so each song has been mixed on its own project, and then you have to import them and then make sure that they all flow together. It's a lot of work, a lot of tracks, a lot of RAM, a lot of CPU, a lot of processing power. But I couldn't have done it any other way. I had to do it on one project because I had to see the whole finished thing in front of me in one go,
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're getting off into the weeds again. But
sorry.
Another con of recording yourself is you don't have access to a nice recording space unless your bassist is a millionaire that lives in a nice castle with big rooms. But assuming they don't, it's hard to record drums in a flat.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to sound nice. It's going to be really...
No. Unless that's the vibe you're going for. You want
course,
super like janky, nasty sounding drums. It can sound cool. But yeah. If you want that sort of like big, clean drum sound, it's not going to happen. Yeah. Studio, like space is important.
Yeah, I mean, there are some styles of music and some styles of drum recordings that this room that we're in just now doesn't even sound good. So I have to do some weird techniques to make them sound different, to make it sound like it wasn't in this room. An example, like this is a really good room for accurate beefy sounding drums. It's not a dry room. It's got a tail on it. So if I clap, then I hear that. It's got a little 100 millisecond, 200 millisecond reverb tail.
Yeah.
Whereas a dead room for drums, I wouldn't recommend recording in a dead room for drums. You want some sort of tail. And if you want big, huge, roomy sounding drums, taking them to like a church hall or a gym or something with no curtains, that you want that sound, you do it.
Stairwell.
There was one recording I did here. So I usually use like multiple mics, like 12 to 15 mics on the drums.
Yeah.
There was one session I did where I just used one mic because that's the type of sound the guy wanted. He wanted something that was really lo-fi, kind of smashy, crashy, disgusting sound. And I was like, I'm not even going to bother miking the full kit up. I'm just going to put one room mic. It was an omnidirectional mic, so it picks up from the front and the back and all the sides equally, not just the front. So it picked up the direct drum sound from the drums and also picked up from the back wall, the side wall, the ceiling, the floor, everything. And what I did was compress the absolute bejesus out of this mic to make it sound super nasty. And it was one of the coolest drum sounds I've ever heard. It was so cool. So simple, one mic. But that would not have worked on everything. It was a certain song, a certain sound. The song was about coal mining.
Right.
It was dark and dingy and yuck, and that's what the drums sound like, and it suited the song down to the ground. If I had a super hi-fi, Paramore style drum kit sound, it would have sounded so rubbish. It would have been terrible. So if you have a room that when you play drums in it, it sounds like in a tin can, and your music lends itself to that, brilliant, great. But
otherwise,
yeah, you're kind of screwed. So you're kind of dependent on your room that you're recording in.
And it's difficult to, if you're in a really small space, it's difficult to get lots of people in as well. If you prefer to record all in the one space kind of a thing.
Yep. Yep.
Live track and all that.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to do it in a flat. Hey, you could do it. You'll struggle.
Yeah, the way I've seen people do that is they put people throughout the flat. So someone's in a bedroom, someone's in the bathroom, someone's in the living room, and then they connect them all via wires. So you get isolation. So if the guitar amp's blaring in the living room and the drums are down the stairs, it's fine. But geez, I mean, you need some setup. That's hard. I would hate to run that session. Just chaos. Oh no, it's not a controlled environment at all. You get folk running around and there's cables everywhere, and oh no, that's my worst nightmare. I'm a neat and tidy person. I would hate that.
Yeah.
I hate clutter and mess. It just makes me anxious. Another con is obviously the money. You need to buy the equipment. That's a lot of equipment you need to buy. If you're recording a band.
Totally.
We're talking XLR cables, microphones, mic stands,
DI boxes, and
interface, the actual DAW, maybe even a laptop.
Microphones, or a decent laptop. Like, we're not talking just like a wee rubbishy, dinky, thing. Like, you need to have a pretty decent CPU and like a good amount of RAM.
Yeah. Yep. I think the PC I have has 16 gig RAM, which is more than enough for recording. That's the studio PC. I recommend anything more than 8 gig of RAM. I have recorded 8 gig of RAM before, and it worked. It was painful sometimes for big sessions, but most of the time it was all right. And then the next computer I got had 12, and it was a lot better. But I recommend 16 gig of RAM nowadays is kind of standard.
Yeah. There's some people walking about with like double that.
Yeah, yeah.
Although to be fair, people that tend to have like that amount, you tend to use that amount of RAM. You're looking at if you're doing a lot of like video stuff, video intensive stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
And I went PC early on. I didn't go down the Mac route.
yeah.
Everyone I know who has a studio or records or mixes all use Macs.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
When people come in here and they're like, "Is that a PC?" I was like, "Yeah." What of it?
Yeah.
And they're like, "How can you record on PC?" Like they just think because it's so mainstream to be on Mac recording, they just think, "Can PCs do that?" I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, not knocking down like stuff like Logic and all the.
Logic works fine on PC.
Oh, there you go.
Man, just
Even though it's like it's designed for Mac, but
yeah. As far as I'm aware, I could be talking rubbish. Pretty sure you can get it on PC. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to look that up later. I'm pretty sure it's on PC, surely.
Yeah, the only thing you can't get is your free DAW GarageBand. It's the only thing you can't get on.
Oh, no.
PC. Oh, no!
Audacity, mate. Audacity.
Whoa.
That's what I started on. Nothing wrong with Audacity.
Yeah.
Apart from the way it looks.
Apart from the way it looks.
It's
And
ugly. It's not as ugly as Reaper. Reaper is an abomination. It's disgusting. Everyone like swears by Reaper as well.
I can't.
Don't get it. It's so ugly. It's so uninspiring. It's like looking at a big grey beige screen. No. So yeah, I started off on PC because I could get more processing power for less money than a Mac. So when I was shopping around, I was intending on getting a Mac, and I went to PC World way back when, 2011, to get a laptop.
Before it was Curry's PC World.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I said to the guy, "Look, I'm looking for a laptop for recording." And he's like, "Oh, you'll be wanting a Mac then?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm looking at all the options." And he showed me this MacBook, and it was £900.
Yeah.
It's £900. Yeah. And it had 6 gig RAM, and it had the a really fast processor.
Yeah, full time, I'm sure.
And it had a smallish screen, no number pad, and I was like, okay. And then he showed me an HP computer. The screen was about 2 inches bigger. It had a number pad, fingerprint scanner. Not that you need that. It had 8 gig RAM, a bigger hard drive, a faster processor, and it was £800. It was £100 cheaper, and it was a beefier laptop. It was much more powerful.
Huh.
Yeah, it was bigger, and I was like, well, no brainer. I'm like, I'm going to get the HP. So I got the HP and USB interface with Cubase, and as it happened at that point, they recommended Cubase for PC because Cubase ran better on PC than it did on Mac at that point. So I started on PC, and then I got another laptop in 2015, which had 12 gig RAM. And then in 2018, I got my big PC that I've got just now. And see, the thing about PC is, like, if I run out of hard drive room or whatever, I can just buy an SSD online and then fit it myself in, like, I mean, the SSD I put in it, that's in it just now, it took me 10 minutes to install.
That's the thing, like, yeah, totally. Like, you want more RAM, that's fine. Just order it. Take the RAM out, stick the new one in.
Yeah.
It's as easy as that.
More hard drive, more RAM. I can replace the CPU myself. Whereas Apple gets a little bit complicated. You know, you end up having to get rid of the whole thing or taking it to an Apple shop, and they charge you a fortune. And I'm like, you're paying like 10-20% extra for the badge, for the little Apple badge on the side of it. And at the time I was like, I want to start recording music, and I know how to use Windows, and I was like, I don't really want to learn Mac, so I'm just going to go PC. Plus I was playing games and stuff, and you can't play games really on Mac. It's kind of poopy and horrible.
Yeah.
So it was like the best of both worlds. And I've just never come off it. So I would recommend, if you are wanting to record yourself and you are looking to buy, consider PC, because it's more customizable. You can swap in and out parts easily. Yeah, sure, Windows 10 ain't exactly... I mean, there's what... To change sound properties in PC, there's about 3 different menus. Like, your inputs and outputs and recording, and like, was it the default communication device and all that? It's all in like 3-4 separate windows. It's dumb. It should be all in one. There's a lot of stuff in Windows where it's really unintuitive and hard to figure out. But look, it's Windows, isn't it? It's everyone knows what Windows is. It's a lot cheaper. Is it as reliable? Probably not. But it does it does the job. I sound like a spokesperson for Microsoft. Must be the vaccine. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I'm sitting there like, yes.
I'm totally.
Gotta buy a Windows phone.
I should. Oh, probably gonna get cancelled now. So, yeah, you need to learn about mixing and mastering. You need to spend more money. And you miss out on a professional external opinion, obviously, because there's a guy there who does this for a living and will probably know more than you about it, so you can use their expertise. Yeah. And then I think the biggest con of all, you will inevitably start bickering and fighting over stupid mix decisions with your bandmates.
Yeah, there's another one that I thought of as well.
Cool.
To add on top of that. If other people have got recording software, you're waiting on other people to record their stuff on time and send it to you with in the correct, like, sample rate and stuff, and like, so
it's like thing. Your guitarist sends it in 44.1, your vocalist sends it in 96K, your keyboardist sends it on CD. Your brass player sends it in cassette tapes. Like, can we just get some, standard formats, please? Someone's using Audacity, someone's using Cubase, someone's using Pro Tools.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
You're getting a Dropbox link. You're getting
a
WeTransfer. You're getting Google Drive.
Carrier pigeon. Like, that'll be from the bassist.
The bassist that lives in a mansion.
Oh, what am I saying? The bassist won't have recorded his part yet. He hasn't even learned it. So
yeah,
I say bassist, I mean bass player.
Yeah, they don't even have a bass guitar to record with.
Yes, it's their brother's bass or something.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. So, what should you do? So obviously, recording has to take place physically with physical people in the room.
Yes.
Or remotely with individuals recording at home. So if you want everything pronto and you don't have, to wait on carrier pigeons bringing you your mix, record it all in the one room on one laptop at one time, if possible. And then you can maybe just arrange, like, with your bassist, hey, when are you free? I'll come over to yours with the laptop and the recording gear and we'll record in your flat, or come over to mine, we'll do it, blah, 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 blah. Do it that way. I would suggest not relying on people doing it themselves, because that's when things start to go wrong. Especially one of the sessions I've mixed, apparently one of the members in the band, he didn't have a DAW, but he did have an iPad, so he got GarageBand on his iPad, and he bought an interface for his iPad and recorded his guitar parts on the iPad GarageBand amp sim. And when he sent it, it was in this weird GarageBand language that nothing else could interpret. So the guy mixing it had to get GarageBand so that it could interpret this random signal, random file. And then he was getting stuff from like Pro Tools people and like trying to get software that works with, nightmare. Because it doesn't, GarageBand, if I'm right in saying, doesn't allow you to export individual tracks. So if you're recording like drums, if it's a drum machine, you can't take like individual instruments. I think you have to have the plugin or there was some weird technicality that you
Right, okay.
because GarageBand's quite limited. It's only like it's just a little beginner software thing.
Yeah. The only thing it's really good for is making demos.
Making demos, yeah. So yeah, that's what I would suggest is record all together, and like you have to have decent skill to do it, obviously. So you've got the track recorded in some way or another. What do? Do you mix it yourself? Do you master it yourself, or do you send it to someone else? So obviously I'm biased, so I'm going to say send it to someone who knows what they're doing. Because mixing, if it's halfway decent recorded, now break it down, you kind of said this earlier, the hardest part to record is drums, right? If you're recording a real drum kit, there's like 12 mics, kick, snare, top, snare bottom, hi-hat, tom, overhead left, overhead right, and maybe a couple of room mics. That's 11 anyway. That's a lot of money, and a lot can go wrong. There's a lot of phase problems and issues that you're not even aware of. Weird microphone glitches and problems. That's hard. But recording DI guitar is super easy. Anybody can do it. You just plug your guitar into an interface, make sure it's not clipping, and you're good to go. You can reamp that signal later if needs be. You can use an amp sim, bass as well. Record DI, use a bass amp sim. You can even record out the back of an amp if you really wanted to. It's no hard. You can't really get that wrong. Even vocals is hard to get wrong. If you've got a halfway decent mic, £100 mic or £200 mic, set it up in a room, in a relatively dead room, and put your singer with their back to a set of curtains. Point the mic at the curtains with the singer in between, obviously. You'll get a decent mic sound, a decent vocal sound. That's not hard, but drums is hard. So that begs the question, should you just record drums in a studio? If you can't afford the full thing, would you just record the drums in the studio and do the rest at home? Yeah, why not? It's fine. You can try it yourself. If you really want to go and do that, then you do that. But it's easy to record guitar yourself. You can do it, but drums, there's more to go wrong. So yeah, mixing, I would suggest getting someone to do it. But if you really want to do it yourself, maybe get in touch with a friend who maybe knows what they're doing, or send the mix around, get suggestions, because you've got to assume that, as a general rule, assume that the person you're talking to knows more than you do. That way you're willing to learn something. So if you speak to a couple of pals and they're in bands and they're like, oh, your guitars are too loud. And you're like, no, you don't know anything. I've been in this project for, be willing to take criticism, because you're doing something that's new. You don't really know what you're doing. Yeah. So if someone says something, like, be aware of what they're saying and try and think of it objectively if you're mixing yourself. So like I was saying, technology has made it so that you can record in your house. But should you? That's the whole point in this. And I think if you're up for it, why not?
Yeah, I think the answer at the end of the day is it depends on your individual situation. But totally, if you're up for it and you know what you're doing, then do it. Why not? It's worth experimenting, and sometimes that little bit of, it's finding that balance, isn't it? Because that balance, because you don't want to, you want to know enough but not too much, because I feel like when you know too much, you're more likely to do the correct thing, and then not explore interesting, different ways of mixing something.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing you can sort of play with. I
can
guess.
remember getting to that point, and when you start to learn how much you don't know, that's a scary bit. Like when you start to get a grasp of recording, you think, oh right, I'm getting into this, and then you discover something that then basically opens up an entire avenue of things that you didn't know, and then you're like, oh my god, I feel so inferior, and then you start diving into things that you really shouldn't be diving into, like things that you didn't even know existed, like RMS and master, all these mastering terms, like mastering limits and peak volume and RMS, like I was saying, and you start to dive into all this stuff, and then you realize how much you don't know, and then you start making stupid decisions, like based on limited knowledge, and then you start to ruin things.
Yeah.
Trying every single different plugin that you have on every single different track, realizing that there are only a few plugins that you only need, and by putting every flavor in the mix can actually make it worse. But before, when you had 2 or 3 tools, you were probably better off just using those 2 or 3 tools rather than 26 tools. So there was a point, if you look back in some of my early projects, I would only use like 2 or 3 EQs. And then a year later, I was using 26 EQs. And then you go now, and I'm back to using 3 EQs again. Because I'm like, look at all this stuff. And I'm like, use it all. And then I'm just ruining all my mixes. Because it's like too much. And you just want to put everything on it because you think that must be what you do. But no, you've just got to get used to. It's whole back to that limitations thing again, isn't it? It's like that's where the magic is. It's when you limit yourself. When you start to learn too much, you want to explore everything. Oh, I learned 7/8, so I'm going to write all my tunes in 7/8. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like you start discovering things, and then you just dive right into them.
That's what I was like with major 7 sharp 11 chords. I was just like, I'm just going to put them in everywhere.
Yeah. So be careful, like just everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Don't go nuts when you discover a new thing. Don't put it on everything. Just use it where necessary. So that would be my advice if you were mixing yourself. But as I said, where it takes you like 3 months to mix one song, it takes me an hour. So you're probably best just going to a mix engineer. It's an opportunity cost. You're spending that amount of time on something. Why don't just pay some money and you can get your results faster?
I mean, if you're quite comfortable talking about like these sort of hybrid situations, if you're quite comfortable recording your own guitar parts and things like that, and a sound engineer really well, you could just like record all the stuff in your house and then send it away to get mixed and mastered, and
Yep.
Yep. You're still paying a bit of money, but you're saving a bit too in terms of time and getting people in the same place.
Well, I've got one actual example of this. You can actually go and listen to this track. Some people may have even heard it. The whole Scottish football thing, the Yes Sir I Can Boogie phenomenon.
Yes.
Well, there was a version of that I did. And it became it was pushed around, like it was played on like Clyde One and did really well. I think it was played at Hampden. The guy who did the arrangement even did an interview with the original group that sang it, Baccarat. It came to quite high prominence, and we knew that when we were making it, because when this thing kicked off, there was the crowd were singing it, or the team were singing it at this game, and then he was like to me, this is just a pal of mine, we should do a version of that. And then he recorded it on GarageBand in his house. and he got a bassist mate of his to record a bit, and he got a guitarist to record his bit, and then Mark mixed it in his house, and he sent me it, and he was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "The recording's good, but it's not quite there." And I was like, "Fire it over, and I'll give it a wee master for you." So I mastered it, and it was okay. The mix wasn't great, but it was okay. And he was like, "All right, it sounds so much better." The master did sound a lot better. So he was ready for uploading it to Spotify and stuff. And right before he was about to do it, he sent me another text. He was like, "I'm bottling it. I'm scared. I'm not convinced this is the quality it should be." And I was like, "Oh, God's sake. Right, I'll mix it for you as well." Right. So I just did this. And I mixed it, and it just elevated the track so much. Like, I actually got to see the stems, and he had like 15 backing vocals all layered up. It's amazing. It was so well recorded in his house. He'd done a really good job, but because of his lack of mixing skills,
mixing knowledge,
it was limited. And the results before and after. I mean, you can hear it now. It gets played on the radio sometimes. If you've heard it.
I don't listen to Clyde once, so no.
Fair enough. But it stands up really well.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where the backer said it was better than the Fratelli's version, which is and they went out on record saying that they hated the Fratelli's version, so that's a good compliment. And that was a fluke kind of thing. Like, it was recorded in a house, and it was mixed by me, someone who kind of knows what he's doing. And it made a home recording sound and stand up alongside a multi-million-pound band recording in probably multi-million-pound studios. And it stood up next to it. And even the original artist said ours was better. So it just shows you, like, get a mixing engineer, mastering engineer to help you out. There's no shame in it.
No shame.
As long as your recordings are clean and good, well done, and well executed, well thought out.
Yeah,
the mixing process should be just enough
pretty straightforward.
Yeah. That's my advice anyway. But like I said, I'm biased because obviously I want to.
You want customers.
I want customers, obviously.
You want clients.
Yeah.
No, totally.
But I get the whole self-record thing. It makes sense in some instances.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like it totally depends on your own personal set of skills.
Yeah.
Like, if you know, right, that you're like, well, I do know how to mix, like I know how to do this stuff. I learned how to do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool, that's fine. That's great. You can do that then. That bit doesn't apply to you so much, But if you're somebody like me, I know how to record things, and that kind of thing. But when it comes to mixing, I have no clue. I don't know if I have just a lot of time to put in to learn a very particular skill that, to be honest, I don't think I'll be using that frequently, unless I'm making my own stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. I need to save money. But even then, like, if I'm making stuff and I'm releasing it all the time, I'm expected, at some point I'd rather just like hand it over to somebody who really knows what they're doing. Just to do that instead, Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, bit of a weird episode. Well,
we went into the weeds a lot. That was my fault.
That's good. Because there was stuff that I didn't expect to cover. Yeah, take that however you want. It's kind of bizarre advice, but yeah, that's what I would do. If I didn't know anything about mixing and my band wanted to self-record, I'd maybe do the self-record thing and get someone else to mix it. Just because there's a massive learning curve.
Yeah.
When it comes to mixing. Mixing's different from recording. It's hard to get recording wrong in a lot of instances with guitar and bass and vocals. Drums is a little bit of a more complex beast.
Yes.
But mixing, takes a long time to learn. And you become, like anything, you start to develop intuitions and muscle memory, and like a mixed decision that takes me half a second can take someone who's never done it before 3 hours to figure out. Because I'll listen to half a second of a bit of music and I'm already reaching for the plugin to sort whatever I've just heard. Whereas someone who's never done it before could take a couple hours.
They might not even hear it,
They might not even hear it, exactly, yeah.
And some people, they'll hear it and they won't know what it is or how to fix it. And they'll just sort of,
leave it, yeah.
Yeah. And then when you do come across things like that, you get tired, because it takes a lot of willpower and concentration and thinking, and it can tire you out.
Yeah. Cool. So that was interesting. That's basically all I have on that. If anyone has any questions regarding gear for if setting up maybe a home recording rig, maybe more technical stuff, like we went into a little bit on the laptop side on the actual recording part, the PC part or Mac part, but interfaces, recording like more than one track at one time, because if you're recording drums you need like 12 mics or something, so you need an interface that can take 12 inputs instead of just your 2-track Focusrite Scarlett thing.
It's fine, you can just connect multiple XLR.
I
think you can do to one input.
Just get a Mackie mixer, PA mixer, and just bust it all down to stereo track, and then you can mix it.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions on gear, if they maybe want to build their own little recording rig, give me a shout. Just you can contact us on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or email. We're levelupyourband@gmail.com, and you can. I think there is a contact form on the website as well, levelupyourband.com. And if you have any like podcast questions or requests in general, please let us know. We're always looking for stuff to talk about. 75 episodes in. It's like 25 more and we're at 100.
I know.
It's mental. Anyway, as always, all the reviews, all the likes, all the subscribes, all the notification bells, all the follows, all the stuff.
Yeah.
Do that. Helps immensely. And share it amongst your fellow musicians if and wherever possible. And I've no idea what we're going to talk about next week, as usual. So it'll be a nice, happy wee surprise. It was a happy surprise for Julian today because he didn't actually know what we were going to talk about until he arrived and sat down in the chair. So, so fun times.
Yeah.
Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time.
Cool.
Bye.
See you. Bye.